The rumble of Harley-Davidson engines echoed through the parking lot of Murphy's Diner as the Iron Wolves Motorcycle Club pulled in for their weekly breakfast gathering. Jake Reaper Morrison killed his engine and removed his helmet, running weathered fingers through graying hair. At 52, he'd been riding with the club for over 2 decades, and these Saturday morning meetings had become sacred ritual. "Coffee's getting cold while you're primping, old man," called out Tommy Wrench Rodriguez from across the lot, his voice carrying the easy camaraderie of longtime brotherhood. Jake grinned and was about to fire back a retort when movement caught his eye. A young Asian girl, maybe 16, stood hesitantly at the edge of the parking lot. Her clothes were expensive but wrinkled, as if she'd slept in them. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and she kept glancing over her shoulder nervously. "You seeing this?" Jake murmured to Big Mike Sullivan, the club's sergeant-at-arms, who had just dismounted his bike nearby. Mike followed Jake's gaze and nodded slowly. Kid looks scared out of her mind. The girl took a tentative step forward, then another. Her hands trembled as she approached the group of leather-clad bikers. Most people crossed the street to avoid them, but this teenager was walking straight toward them with desperate determination. "Excuse me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, accented with precise English that spoke of expensive education. "I need help." Jake studied the girl's face, noting the fear that seemed to radiate from her small frame. She couldn't have weighed more than 100 pounds soaking wet, and everything about her screamed vulnerability. Yet here she was, approaching a group of men who made grown adults nervous. "What kind of help, sweetheart?" Jake asked gently, his voice taking on the tone he'd once used with his own daughter. The girl glanced around nervously before speaking. "My name is Mei Chen. I'm 16 and I need protection from my uncle. He's going to make me do things I don't want to do." The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Jake felt his jaw tighten while Big Mike's massive hands slowly clenched into fists. Tommy had stopped his joking entirely, his expression growing dark. "What kind of things?" Jake asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. May's eyes filled with tears, but she held them back with visible effort. "He says I owe him money for bringing me to America, that I have to work for his friends to pay it back. But the work," she shuddered. "It's not the kind of work he told my parents about." Jake exchanged glances with his brothers. They'd all heard stories, seen the news reports about human trafficking, but having it standing right in front of them, in the form of this terrified child, made it real in a way that hit like a punch to the gut. "Where is he now?" Big Mike asked, his voice deceptively calm. "He's coming to get me. I ran away last night, but he has people looking for me everywhere." The Iron Wolves had never considered themselves heroes. They were mechanics, construction workers, and ex-military who found brotherhood on the open road. They settled disputes with fists, protected their own fiercely, and generally minded their own business. But looking at Mei Chen, Jake felt something shift in his chest. "How'd you know to come to us?" Tommy asked, his usual swagger replaced by genuine concern. "I heard people talking about bikers who help people sometimes. I didn't know where else to go. The police..." She shook her head. "My uncle has friends everywhere. Important friends." Jake nodded grimly. Corruption ran deep in some circles, and a scared 16-year-old girl's word against a well-connected businessman wouldn't carry much weight without solid evidence. "Reaper," Big Mike said quietly, using Jake's road name. "We can't just walk away from this." Jake looked around at his brothers. Wrench was already nodding, his face set in determined lines. Even Diesel, the club's youngest member at 24, had stepped closer, his protective instincts clearly engaged. "No," Jake said finally. "We can't." He turned back to Mei. "Okay, kid, here's what's going to happen. You're going to stay with us until we figure out how to keep you safe permanently. But I need you to tell us everything, and I mean everything, about your uncle and what he's planning." May's shoulders sagged with relief so profound that Jake thought she might collapse. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." "Don't thank us yet," Jake said grimly. "This is just the beginning." Inside Murphy's diner, Mei sat in a corner booth surrounded by 5 leather-clad bikers who looked like they could bench press motorcycles. The contrast would have been comical under different circumstances. Dolores, the 60-year-old waitress who'd been serving the Iron Wolves for years, had taken one look at the situation and immediately brought Mei a hot meal and a cup of tea without being asked. "Start from the beginning," Jake said gently. "How did you get here?" Mei wrapped her hands around the warm mug, drawing comfort from its heat. "My parents live in a small village outside Shanghai. They're farmers, very poor. When my uncle, my father's brother, came to visit last year, he seemed so successful. Expensive clothes, nice car. He said he could get me a student visa to America, that I could go to university and send money home." She paused, taking a shaky sip of tea. "My parents were so happy. They thought it was a miracle. Uncle Wei said he would pay for everything, that I could work part-time to pay him back slowly." "But that's not what happened," Big Mike said, his voice gentle despite his intimidating appearance. "No. When I got to San Francisco 3 months ago, there was no school. Uncle Wei took my passport immediately, said it was for safekeeping. He put me in a small apartment with 3 other girls, all Chinese, all scared. He said we owed him $50,000 each for the trip and documents." Jake felt his blood pressure rising. $50,000 was an impossible sum for a teenager to earn legitimately, and that was exactly the point. The other girls had been there longer. They told me what kind of work Uncle Wei expected us to do. "How many girls?" Wrench asked, his usually jovial demeanor completely absent. "In our apartment, 4. But Uncle Wei has other apartments, other girls. Some are Chinese like me, others are from different countries. The older girls said there might be 20 or 30 total." Jake exchanged dark looks with his brothers. This wasn't just one man exploiting his niece. This was a full-scale trafficking operation. "What made you run?" Diesel asked. May's composure finally cracked, tears streaming down her face. "Yesterday, Uncle Wei said my training period was over. That starting tonight, I would begin working. He showed me pictures of the men who had already paid for—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Big Mike's chair creaked ominously as he shifted his weight, barely containing his rage. "Where's this apartment?" "In Chinatown. But they move us around sometimes. Uncle Wei is very careful. He has people watching us all the time, and he says if we try to run, he'll hurt our families back home." "How'd you get away?" Jake asked. "There was a fire in the building next door last night. Everyone was distracted, and I slipped out during the confusion. I've been walking all night trying to stay hidden." Jake pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Rachel," he told the others. Rachel Martinez was a social worker they'd worked with before, one of the few people in the system they trusted completely. "No!" Mei grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "Please, you don't understand. Uncle Wei has connections everywhere. The last girl who tried to get help from social services, they sent her right back to him." Jake hesitated, his finger hovering over Rachel's number. The girl's fear was palpable, and her warning rang with the authenticity of bitter experience. "We need a plan," Jake said, pocketing his phone. "Somewhere safe to keep you while we figure out our next move." "She can stay at my place," Big Mike offered immediately. "Sarah's been wanting to do more volunteer work anyway." Sarah was Mike's wife of 15 years, a former nurse who had a reputation for taking in strays, both human and animal. "That's generous, but it puts your family at risk," Jake pointed out. "My family's been at risk since the day I put on this patch," Mike replied firmly. "This is what we do for each other, and she's under our protection now." Mei looked confused. "Patch?" Tommy pointed to the Iron Wolves emblem on his leather vest. "It means you're family now, kid, and we protect family." Jake's phone buzzed with a text message. He glanced at it and felt his blood run cold. "We need to move, now." "What is it?" Wrench asked. "Dolores just texted from the kitchen. 3 black SUVs just pulled into the parking lot, and the men getting out are asking about a Chinese girl." Mei went pale. "That's them. That's Uncle Wei's people." Jake was already standing, his mind racing through options. The diner had a back exit through the kitchen, but they'd have to move fast. "Mike, take Mei out the back. Get her to your bike and head to your place. Take the long way. Make sure you're not followed." "What about you guys?" Mei asked, fear making her voice small. Jake's smile was grim and predatory. "We're going to have a conversation with your uncle's friends about proper manners." The 3 black SUVs had positioned themselves to block the main exit from the parking lot, a tactical move that told Jake these weren't amateurs. 6 men emerged from the vehicles, all wearing expensive suits that couldn't quite hide the bulges of concealed weapons. They moved with the coordinated precision of professionals. Jake, Tommy, and Diesel positioned themselves near their bikes, presenting a casual facade while actually creating a defensive line. Through the diner's window, Jake could see Big Mike leading Mei toward the kitchen exit. The lead man was clearly in charge, mid-40s, well-groomed, with the kind of cold eyes that came from years of doing terrible things for money. He approached the bikers with the confidence of someone accustomed to intimidating people. "Gentlemen," he said, his English heavily accented, "we're looking for a young Chinese girl. About 16, very pretty. Someone said they saw her talking to you." "Lots of people talk to us," Jake replied evenly. "We're friendly guys." The man's smile was razor-thin. "This girl is family property. She's confused, doesn't understand her obligations. We just want to take her home where she belongs." "Family property?" Tommy repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "That's an interesting way to put it." "You don't understand the situation," another man interjected, stepping forward aggressively. Diesel moved slightly, his hand resting casually near the tire iron attached to his belt. "Why don't you explain it to us?" The tension in the parking lot was thick enough to cut with a knife. Other patrons inside the diner had noticed the standoff and were either ducking down or moving away from the windows. "The girl owes a debt," the lead man continued, seemingly oblivious to the danger he was courting. "A very large debt. She cannot simply run away from her responsibilities." "What kind of debt does a 16-year-old owe?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "Transportation, housing, food, documents. These things are expensive. She must work to pay them back." "What kind of work?" Diesel pressed. The man's expression hardened. "That is family business. Now where is she?" Jake looked the man directly in the eyes. "Even if we had seen her, which I'm not saying we have, we sure as hell wouldn't hand a scared kid over to a bunch of thugs in suits." "You don't know who you're dealing with," the second man snarled, his hand moving toward his jacket. "Actually," Tommy said conversationally, "I think you're the ones who don't know who you're dealing with." As if on cue, the rumble of motorcycle engines filled the air. Jake smiled as he recognized the sound. Reinforcements were arriving. Within moments, 8 more Iron Wolves pulled into the parking lot, surrounding the SUVs. The tactical advantage had just shifted dramatically. "See, here's the thing about family," Jake said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd faced down much worse than these men. "We protect our own. And that girl? She's under our protection now." The lead man's confidence wavered as he realized his team was now outnumbered and outgunned. "This isn't over," he said, signaling his men to retreat. "No," Jake agreed grimly. "It's not." An hour later, the Iron Wolves had regrouped at Big Mike's house, a modest 2-story home in a quiet suburban neighborhood that seemed worlds away from the confrontation at the diner. Mei sat on the living room couch, wrapped in one of Sarah's sweaters, looking small and lost. Sarah Sullivan was everything her husband wasn't. Petite where he was massive, gentle where he was gruff, but with the same fierce protective instinct that had drawn them together 15 years ago. She'd taken one look at Mei and immediately shifted into mother mode, providing food, clean clothes, and the kind of unconditional acceptance that the girl desperately needed. "They'll be back," Jake said, pacing the living room. "And next time they'll come prepared for us." "Let them come," growled Hammer, the club's newest member and a former Marine who'd done 3 tours in Afghanistan. "We've handled worse." "This isn't about us," Jake reminded him. "It's about keeping Mei safe. And that means we need to be smart about this." Mei looked up from her tea. "I should just go back. I don't want you to get hurt because of me." "Like hell," Sarah said firmly, surprising everyone with her vehemence. "You're not going anywhere near those monsters." "Sarah's right," Jake said. "But we need a long-term solution. We can't just play defense forever." "What about going to the FBI?" suggested Wrench. "This is human trafficking. That's federal." "With what evidence?" Jake asked. Mei's testimony alone might not be enough, especially if her uncle really does have connections in law enforcement. Mei spoke up quietly. "There might be a way to get evidence. The other girls in the apartment, they know things, and Uncle Wei keeps records on his computer. He's very careful about money." Jake turned to her. "What kind of records?" "Everything. How much each girl owes, which clients pay for what services, how much money goes where." One of the older girls, Lynn, she used to work in an office before Uncle Wei brought her here. She said his computer has everything on it. "Getting to that computer won't be easy," Big Mike pointed out. "After today, they'll be expecting trouble." "Maybe not," Mei said thoughtfully. "Uncle Wei is very proud, very arrogant. He thinks American bikers are just criminals, not smart enough to really threaten him. He might increase security, but he won't expect anything sophisticated." Jake studied the girl with new respect. Despite her fear and trauma, she was thinking tactically. "What do you have in mind?" "The apartment building has a back entrance that leads to the basement. Uncle Wei's office is on the 2nd floor, but the building's old. The ventilation system connects everything. If someone small enough could get into the basement—" "Absolutely not," Sarah said immediately. "You're not going back there." "I'm the only one who knows the layout," Mei protested. "And the other girls, they need help too. I can't just save myself and leave them." Jake felt a familiar tightness in his chest. The girl reminded him painfully of his own daughter, who died in a car accident 5 years ago. Emma would have been about Mei's age now, and she'd had the same stubborn courage that had driven Jake crazy with worry. "There has to be another way," he said. "What if she doesn't go alone?" Diesel suggested. "I'm small enough to fit through most ventilation systems. Military training, remember?" Jake considered this. Diesel was indeed compact for a biker, and his army background included some unconventional skills that might prove useful. "It's still incredibly dangerous," he said. "Everything about this situation is dangerous," Mei replied with surprising firmness. "But doing nothing is the most dangerous choice of all. Those girls are living in hell, and more arrive every month. How many more will suffer while we try to find a safe solution?" The next 24 hours were spent in careful preparation. Jake had called in favors from contacts throughout the city, former military buddies, sympathetic cops, and even a few reformed criminals who owed the Iron Wolves their lives or freedom. Information flowed in slowly but steadily. Uncle Wei's real name was Wei Huang, and he was indeed well-connected. His legitimate businesses included 3 restaurants and an import company, all of which provided perfect cover for his trafficking operation. More troubling, he had financial ties to several city officials and at least 2 judges. No wonder the girls who tried to get help through official channels ended up back with him, Sarah said grimly as she reviewed the intelligence Jake had gathered. Mei had spent the day drawing detailed maps of the apartment building and Wei's office layout. Her memory for detail was impressive, down to the location of security cameras and the timing of guard rotations. "He changes the guards every 6 hours," she explained. "The night shift is usually just 2 men, and they spend most of their time watching television in the lobby. The cameras are old. They record, but no one monitors them in real time unless there's an alert. Diesel studied the ventilation schematics that Wrench had obtained from the city planning office. "It's doable," he said finally. "Tight, but doable. The question is how long we'll need in the office." "The computer is password protected," Mei said. "But Lin told me Uncle Wei uses the same password for everything. His mother's maiden name and birth year. Zhang 1952. "Assuming that's still current," Jake said. "What about getting the files out?" Hammer held up a small device. "USB drive with 64 gigs of storage. Should be enough for financial records and client lists." Jake looked around the room at his brothers, then at Mei and Sarah. "Everyone understands what we're risking here? If this goes wrong, we're not just talking about a fight. We're talking about federal charges, prison time, and making enemies of some very dangerous people." At 2 a.m., the streets of Chinatown were largely empty except for the occasional taxi and late-night delivery truck. Jake sat on his bike 2 blocks from the Target building, monitoring police radio chatter through an earpiece. So far, everything was quiet. "Eagle 1 in position," came Diesel's voice through the comm system. He was crouched in the alley behind the building, dressed in black tactical gear that made him nearly invisible in the shadows. "Eagle 2 ready?" Mei whispered from her position in a 24-hour laundromat across the street. Despite everyone's protests, she'd insisted on being part of the operation. Her job was simple but crucial. Watch for any unexpected activity and warn the team if Wei or his men showed up. "Overwatch in position," reported Tommy from a rooftop 3 buildings away, equipped with binoculars and a clear view of all approaches to the target. Jake took a deep breath. "All units, this is base. Operation is a go. Eagle 1, you are clear to proceed." Diesel moved like a ghost, picking the lock on the basement door with tools that definitely weren't standard Army issue. Within 30 seconds, he was inside the building. "I'm in," he reported, moving to the ventilation access point. The next few minutes were tense as Diesel navigated the building's bowels, following Mei's directions to reach the shaft that would take him to the 2nd floor. The old building creaked and settled around him, every sound amplified in the silence. "Ventilation shaft located," Diesel whispered. "Beginning ascent." Jake monitored the radio traffic while keeping one eye on the street. The night guards were visible through the lobby windows, exactly where Mei had said they'd be, absorbed in a late-night movie. "I'm at the office level," Diesel reported. "Can see the target room through the vent grate." Diesel carefully removed the ventilation grate and lowered himself into Wei's office. The room was exactly as Mei had described: expensive furniture, traditional Chinese artwork, and a modern computer setup that looked out of place among the antiques. "I'm in the office," he whispered, powering up the computer. The machine took what felt like an eternity to boot up, though it was probably less than a minute. Diesel's hands were steady as he entered the password Mei had provided, Zhang 1952. "I'm in the system," he reported. "Holy shit." "What is it?" Jake asked, though Diesel's tone had already told him it was bad. "This is bigger than we thought, way bigger. I'm seeing records for over 100 girls, not just the 20 or 30 Mei mentioned. And it's not just San Francisco. There are locations in Los Angeles, Seattle, and Vancouver." Jake felt sick. They'd stumbled onto something massive, a trafficking network that spanned the entire West Coast. "Keep copying files," he ordered. "We need everything." "There's more," Diesel continued, his voice tight with anger. "Client lists with names, photos, and preferences. Some of these guys are judges, politicians, business leaders. This goes all the way to the top. How much longer do you need?" 5 more minutes for the financial records, then I'm out." Those 5 minutes stretched like hours. Jake watched the guards in the lobby, noting that one of them was starting to look restless. Tommy reported movement in the distance, a car that had driven past the building twice. "Possible surveillance vehicle," Tommy warned. "Black sedan, 2 occupants." "Eagle 1, how much longer?" Jake asked urgently. "Almost done, just need to..." The sound of footsteps in the hallway cut off Diesel's transmission. Someone was coming. "Movement in the building," Diesel whispered urgently. "Someone's coming up the stairs." Jake's mind raced through options. "Can you get back to the vent?" "Negative. They're too close. I'm going to have to find another way out." The footsteps were getting closer. Diesel quickly pocketed the USB drive and moved toward the office window. It was a 2-story drop to the alley below, survivable but not pleasant. "Eagle 2, I need a distraction," Jake said into his comm. Mei's voice came back immediately. "On it!" Across the street, the fire alarm in the laundromat suddenly began blaring. Within seconds, the building's own fire alarm system activated in response, filling the night with noise and flashing lights. The footsteps in the hallway stopped, then began moving quickly back toward the stairs. Diesel used the confusion to slip back into the ventilation shaft, replacing the grate just as voices echoed from the lobby below. "Fire department's been called," Tommy reported. "Multiple units responding." "All units, extract immediately," Jake ordered. Rendezvous at the safe house. 20 minutes later, they were back at Big Mike's house, adrenaline still coursing through their veins. Diesel connected the USB drive to Sarah's laptop, and the full scope of Wei's operation began to unfold. "Jesus Christ," Wrench muttered as he scrolled through client lists. "Half the city council is on here." "Look at this," Sarah said, pointing to financial records. "He's been moving money through shell companies for years. The total it's over $50 million. Mei stared at the screen in shock. $50 million? From selling girls? "It's not just the trafficking," Jake said grimly. "Look at these photos. He's been blackmailing his clients, too. Get them hooked on his services, then threaten to expose them unless they provide favors. Political influence, legal protection, business deals." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't just dealing with a human trafficker. They were looking at a corruption network that reached into every level of city government. "What do we do now?" Mei asked quietly. Jake looked at the evidence spread across the laptop screen, then at the brave young woman who had risked everything to expose this evil. "Now," he said, "we bring them all down.